Hello, I'm Donald Macaulay, and welcome to this conversation on Medics' Voices. Today I'm talking to Professor Martin Dawes. Now, Martin has had a very interesting academic trajectory because he has worked on both sides of the Atlantic, starting off in Oxford, moving towards the east coast of North America, and now on the west coast of North America. Martin, tell me a little bit about your academic trajectory.
I didn't plan it. I think that's the important thing to say. I took opportunities when they arose. So I was running the Center for Evidence-Based Medicine, and one of my students at the time was a visiting fellow who was the professor of surgery at McGill. And he and I came to blows, quite frankly, verbally, about evidence-based surgery and whether we should be using more evidence and creating more evidence in surgery. And obviously this fed back to the dean at McGill, and I got an invitation to go out there and have a look at the department. And, things were at a stage in my career where I've been in the practice for 17 years, lived in Oxford, I grew up there. Yeah, why not actually take the plunge? And I actually come from a family who have taken the plunge. My sister is in California, my brother is in Ottawa. So it wasn't the huge leap, although my wife might disagree. Kids were at university and we said, why don't we do this? So we leapt, and I took on the role of head of department in McGill, and it was an eye-opener. And one of the little asides is I thought medicine might be different in North America, and I was lucky enough invited on my second day there to sit in on a consultation or a morning with a GP, became a close friend. And it was really reassuring how people were worried, came in, had a conversation, physicians knew the patients, knew the family. It was actually feeling very much like being in England. There were nuances of difference, but generally the whole process was the same. And then fast forward, I had a lovely time there for 8 years, but the Dean of Medicine at UBC, I was at a meeting with him and he said, would you ever think of coming across to UBC and Vancouver? And we'd had 8 winters in Montreal. And while it was fun, what I didn't want to do was to get into my 70s and 80s being restricted to walking in a mall because I was frightened of slipping on the ice for 6 months of the year. And so we thought we'd have a good look. We fell in love with the place. I mean, it is a beautiful area, and UBC has been a fantastic university to work for. So I took on the same role as department head. In the meantime, I was able to carry on my research career, and they were very welcoming here, talking about genetics, and I worked closely with a group here. So it fed both the need for me to continue my sort of academic giving back as an administrative role, as well as the research role and clinical role. I was able to practice here as well as practicing in Quebec, and that's been a real privilege.
It's been very interesting to look at your academic career from the evidence-based medicine, but you've now moved on to some really interesting genetic research.
Yes, I mean, again, this is taking opportunities, and there's one thing I would say towards, the end of my career is leaping into those opportunities has been the best thing for me, and it's always about the people. And so genetics, I had an introduction when I was at McGill to a person who wanted to do warfarin genetics. So the test for, can we predict a more accurate dose for warfarin to start patients on using a pharmacogenetic variant. And I won't go into the details of the pharmacogenetic variant, but he said, can we get it into a family physician's electronic medical record? And that, okay, this is actually making all this genetic allele stuff clinically relevant to us in family medicine, which is where we want it. And so we did that work, and it actually worked. We were able to do the genetic test, get it into electronic medical record, use the information to adjust warfarin doses within primary care. And then when I got to UBC, I was immediately introduced to someone called Peter Cullis, and really within a week, And he said, could we put in a grant together in 2 weeks' time? And it was that sort of rush of, well, okay, this is all about primary care and genetics. Yes, let's, because whether it's disease prediction or whether it's pharmacogenetics for medication, whether it's picking up rare diseases using family histories, everything's going to happen in primary care. It's going to be the same as any other new technology where, yes, of course, it happens in big hospitals first, but then most of it gets shifted into primary care, and genetics is no different from that. And what I've been doing is really actually on the software side of it. How can we create software that makes it so easy for a physician to say, yes, okay, these are the drugs that might work for this individual, adjusted for everything, the liver, the renal, the other conditions, the other drugs they're taking, and yes, the genetics. And these are possible to create these algorithms.
When I first heard your research, I thought it was the most exciting piece of research I'd ever heard in family medicine, because it integrated all those things we value: the science, the cutting edge genetic science, the personal care, and the individualized care. So you're immersed in this. Where do you think it's going to go?
Oh, I think UK has got a great leader in Munir Mohammed, and I think it's actually going to happen. I have a huge respect for the process the UK is taking, that stepping back, saying, first of all, how many patients might a family physician actually have to use this technology in a week? And actually wasn't Munir who did that. Youssef did that and showed that it'd be about 12 patients. And you take a panel of genes where there's really strong evidence for drug-gene interaction. That leads to 40 or 50 drugs potentially. How often are those drugs prescribed in primary care de novo? About 12 patients a week. Okay, now we can work back. We know we're going to be using this technology in 12 patients. And we've got to use it with other things. So we need a good clinical decision support system. We need to have labs that can do really robust genetic tests. We need a system that can store that information so it can be used anywhere in the country at any time with that individual. And the NHS is actually addressing those things right now. And I'm getting very excited by that. In North America, it's sort of a Wild West. So the clinics are doing the same sort of quality of tests that the UK will be doing, but the lab information is residing in different places. So if the patient then goes from wherever they had the test done in Chicago to New York, the New York doctor won't have that information. So I think the NHS and the UK is actually creating a system where everyone will have these tests done and the information will be in a very easy way to use. I think realizing it's so common, and rare diseases are common. I mean, it's a peculiar thing to say, but actually if you bundle all the rare diseases, the Ehlers Danlos and these sorts of things together, every one of us as a family physician has a handful of those patients. And yes, of course, the colorectal cancers, the breast cancers, those are more common examples of inherited diseases, but that information will then, or the genetics for those will be shared up and down generations in software that will be embedded into, the two major UK primary care electronic records. So I think that this is coming. It's coming. It has come. There are people who've had pharmacogenetic tests done in the UK, and that information is being used right now. And across the world, it's being used right now. What we're seeing is the move from it's new to this is now standard practice of care. And you think about a patient who's going to have Plavix or clopidogrel post-MI, it's almost today in North America a standard to do a pharmacogenetic test before you do that. So yes, it's coming. It's very exciting because it will improve the outcomes for patients.
We've spoken about the advance of science and integration with personal care in an abstract form, in a scientific form. From a personal point of view, you've had your own experience of the science of medicine and the advances of science and medicine. How has it been as a patient?
Yeah, it's been unbelievable, actually. I mean, I got a nasty dose of stage 4 melanoma. And as a family doctor, I've got one particular patient who I looked after. He was in his 40s, and it was we thought a lipoma, but it was a melanoma, and he died within 3 months. And we all had those patients, and there was I with a phenomenal family physician who came round on a Saturday lunchtime after I'd had the CT on the Friday and said, okay, you've got a brain tumor. I'm going to put you on dexamethasone, a bit of Ativan, and we're going to get you sorted, and I'm going to look after you. And she knew the 3 things to say to me that would sort of calm me down. No, I'm going to look after you. So important to hear that as a patient, that however much you might know about medicine and genetics and science, having someone actually touch you and say, I'm going to look after you, is critical. Then just to take the therapeutic option out of your hands in that critical moment and just say, I'm going to give you dexamethasone and a bit of Ativan. And then to say, and I'm going to organize a CT or whatever the test is, and you'll get the test done this week and call me on my cell if you don't get the appointment. So you now know what's going to happen, you know what you're going to take, and you know someone's going to care for you. And I think that was, for me, as important as the amazing immunotherapy that I got. I mean, I got some stunning tests done, MRIs, I got gamma knife, which is radiotherapy to the brain down to the nearest millimeter that destroyed the brain tumor. And then the immunotherapy every 2 weeks for 2 years was, I mean, it's unbelievable. It just kicked my immune system back into recognizing the 8 lesions in my chest and saying, no, we don't want those. And now I have CTs of my chest that say no lesions seen, no metastases. And to be on the other end of that incredible science where T cells that have stopped reacting have been turned on. I mean, we're talking, this is amazing science. And yes, to be a recipient of that Nobel Prize winning work is truly incredible. I mean, medicine has gone so far, and this science and inclusion of science, while still retaining that personal element of, I'm going to look after you. And my oncologist has been exactly the same sort of, you have any problems, and it's not just doctor to doctor, they do this for everyone, that they're really concerned for the individual and what they're going through, and help them through that journey. And in fact, mine had its ups and downs, but I'm now over 2 years post, so my survival prognosis is back to a 68-year-old, which is truly remarkable. I mean, it is an unbelievable thing to be on the end of that sort of treatment.
Martin, as I listened to you, I thought, what a wonderful description of the integration of the Nobel Prize within science with the kindness and care of a GP. Martin, thank you very much for sharing your academic journey, your scientific journey, and of course, your personal journey. As always, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Donald.